Here we go. Hi, everybody, and welcome to our weekly Pirkei Avos Shir. Nice to be with you. Hope you're nice and warm. It's a little bit cold, but hopefully we can warm up with a little bit of Pirkei Avos as well, some ethics of our fathers. So let's have a look at the next Mishnah, and we are on, if you're in the Artscroll Siddur, we are on page 546, right at the bottom of the page. If you're in the Chabad Siddur, it's on page 272, and we're up to Mishnah number, I don't know about that one, but we're Mishnah number 12. 12. Perek Rishon Mishnah Yud Beis. Perek, first chapter, Mishnah number 12. We meet up here with the next set of pairs, and probably the most famous of them all. Remember, we have said that there were sets of pairs who were in the position of leadership of the Jewish community over a period of many, many years. And here we meet up with the two most famous of them all, Hillel and Shammai. They became household names for a number of very, very important reasons, some of which we're going to touch on today. But Hillel and Shammai, and once again, Hillel was the Nasi. Hillel was the, let's call it the prince, the leader of the community, the king kind of a role. Shammai was the head of the Beis Din. Shammai was the head of the courts. He was the judicial head. And they worked together and they governed together. It is also well known that Hillel and Shammai are often used as an example of not seeing eye to eye, of having machloikas, of having differences of opinion. Hillel and Shammai. Now, Hillel and Shammai didn't necessarily disagree on anything. They saw things, say our sages, from different angles. It's almost like, you know, if you were to take a look at something from above down or from below up, you would get a different perspective. And it's almost like that when we think about Hillel and Shammai, in the way that they saw things and in the way that they viewed everything, and particularly their views on halacha, on Jewish law, and perhaps more particularly, as we're going to touch on today, in their viewing of people, in their viewing of moral issues, and their viewing of interaction between individuals, between people. Hillel and Shammai. Excuse me, the most famous difference of opinion, I think, that we have that's played out on a regular basis in our day-to-day Yiddishkeit is the difference of opinion between Hillel and Shammai when it came to lighting the Hanukkah candles. Hillel and Shammai, or it's Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai, their way of teaching. So remember that they gave rise to a school of thought. Their school of thought, the school of thought of Hillel and the school of thought of Shammai, was completely different. Hillel said we should light one candle on the first night, two on the second, three on the third, all the way through till the eighth night when we light 8. Shammai said we should do it in exact reverse order, the opposite way down, rather than up. We should go from 8 to 7 to 6 to 5 to 4 to 3 to 1. On the last night, we should light one candle. This was the view of Shammai. Now, you and I would say, well, hey, 1 second. This is viewing things completely differently. And how can, according to Torah, they can actually both be right? How can they both be right? Yes, we've got to have a modus operandi. We've got to have one way that we follow according to halacha, according to Jewish law. But they can both be right according to Torah, and we explain it by the fact that they actually were looking at two different things. And the one is that Hillel was looking at actual. What have I accomplished? On the first day of Hanukkah, I've accomplished the light of one day. I light one candle. On the second day of Hanukkah, 2. On the third day of Hanukkah, 3, and so on. Well, how did Shammai look at it? Shammai looked at it in a way of potential. On the first day of Hanukkah, how much can I accomplish? 8. So light 8. On the second day, how much can I accomplish? I only have 7 left, so I can do 7. You know, if you were going to sleep at night, and before you go to sleep, you try and think of your day that you have had. And we're supposed to do this when we say our Kriya Shema, when we say our Shema, Krishma Lamita, when we finish the day and we go to sleep at night. We should think back on the day. Now, if we think back and we look back on the day, we could say, well, what have I learned today? What have I done today? How many mitzvahs did I do today? I could take a look at that and clock up my accomplishments and possibly go to sleep feeling pretty good about myself. If I adopt a Shammai kind of approach, that would be the Hillel approach. If I adopt a Shammai kind of approach, maybe I won't sleep so well because I've got to take a look at what I could have accomplished. What did I fail to accomplish? What didn't I achieve? So all very well that I did this and I did that and I spent this amount of time learning and so on, but I has wasted this amount of time and I spent that time doing this and gossiping perhaps, or talking a little Lashon Hara, or maybe watching Netflix or doing something else that didn't necessarily benefit the world in any way, and therefore it's much more difficult a task, a much more difficult a view. Now that we would quantify as a Shammai kind of a view, and Hillel giving us, let's call it the easier, the more palatable, the more palpable, the more in keeping with the way that we think of this is what I've accomplished. Great, wonderful. Yes, tomorrow I want to accomplish more, of course, but let's not look at potential, let's rather look at actual. Now today's Mishnah, while we introduce Hillel and Shammai, and we're going to talk a little bit more about some of their differences of opinions in a moment, based on what they teach and what they say. It's an amazing thing here that for the first time, we actually have a number of Mishnahs that we're going to quote in the name of Hillel, whereas up until now, we only said one Mishnah for each one of these pairs. Here we're going to have a few. We're going to only deal with one today, and that is the first one that Hillel says. So let's have a look at that Mishnah. It says, Hillel v'Shammai kiblu mehem. Hillel and Shammai were the next in line to receive from them being the ones who came before, which was Shmaya and Avtalion. Hillel and Shammai were the next in the lineage to receive the traditions, the leadership, the Torah, the oral law, and the direction from Shmaya and Avtalion. Hillel Omer, a famous Mishnah. Hillel Omer, Hillel said, and here is his Mishnah, number one. Hevei mitalmidav shel Aaron. He says, be of the students of Aaron. Be of the students of Aaron. Which Aaron? Of course, we're talking about Aaron HaKohen. But we're going to explain soon why he doesn't say Aaron HaKohen. Why does he say Hevei mitalmidav shel Aaron? He doesn't use the word HaKohen here, right? So we all know who was Aaron. Aaron was Moshe's brother, his older brother. And Aaron was the high priest. Aaron was given the kahuna. Aaron was the Kohen. And usually we refer to him, same way as we talk about Moshe, as Moshe Rabbeinu, we talk about Aaron HaKohen. We talk about Aaron, the high priest, or the priest, but here we don't talk about Aaron HaKohen. He says, Hevei mitalmidav shel Aaron, be of the students or the pupils of Aaron. In what way? And he gives us now why. Why should we be the students of Aaron? What does it mean to be the students of Aaron? Number one, Oyev Shalom v'Rodev Shalom. Number one is, he says, love peace. Number two is Rodev Shalom. Rodev Shalom means pursue peace. Not only love peace, but chase after peace. Chase after peace, pursue it. Rodev Shalom. Next thing, Oyev Sabrias, he says, next thing is love all creatures, umekarvan la Torah, and bring them close to Torah. Let's unpack a little bit here what Hillel is teaching us. First of all, to tell us that why it's important to say Hillel Omer, that Hillel said this Mishnah, was I think we know that Hillel actually stood for this, and he's best known for standing for this, much more than any of the other things that we attribute to Hillel. We know that Hillel was an Ohev Yisrael. He loved people. He loved everybody. He loved people. Umekarvan la Torah, and he brought them close to the Torah. They tell a famous story. The Gemara tells a story, the Talmud relates, that Hillel was once challenged in the following way. It was a fascinating story that happened. The exact details we're not going to go into, but there were two guys who made a challenge. The one said, very often I suppose people like to talk about their rabbis, and they say, my rabbi is so great, he could even do this. And my rabbi is so great, he could do that, and so on. These two were having an argument. The one said, it's impossible to make Hillel lose his cool. It's impossible to make Hillel lose his temper. Hillel will never lose his temper. And the other one said, I bet you I can get him to lose his temper. And he said, well, you won't. So you know what? They took a bet. And the bet was, I think, I stand corrected, but I think that they bet 400 zuz. 400 zuz. So can you imagine? They said, well, we're going to wager a bet here. 4,000 rand, we're going to bet on this. The one says, you can make Hillel lose I'll make Hillel lose his temper. The other one says, you won't. So what did he do? It says that he waited for Hillel to go into the mikveh. Hillel went to the bathhouse on Erev Shabbos and Erev Yom Tov, or whenever it was, he went into the mikveh, to the bathhouse. And he waited until he was in there for a while. So he knew that by now, Hillel must have gotten undressed. He must have been ready to immerse in the mikveh. He must have been ready to go to the bathhouse, into the bath. And he came rushing in, this guy. And he said, I need to see Hillel, I need to see Hillel, I need to see Hillel. So, they send out a call that rattles through the bathhouse. You can imagine the scene. And he said, what's so urgent? No, urgent, he's got to see him. Hillel puts on a robe, comes upstairs. We're out of the bathhouse area. So there's a chair outside. And he sits down and he says to the guy, what can I do to help you? And the guy says, I need to know, why is it? And he comes up with some people who come from this and this place. Why is it that they have round heads? Why do the people coming from that place, why do they have round heads? So Hillel says, well, let me explain to you. Their midwifery is not very good. And when their children are born, the midwives don't handle the kid correctly. And all the kids in that neighborhood come out with round heads. The guy says, wow, that's amazing. And how do you? He says, no, this is, from ages of learning and understanding people and whatever. He says to the guy, is there anything else I can do for you? And he says, no, thank you, but thank you for answering my question. The fellow leaves and waits another few minutes till he knows that by now Hillel must have got undressed again and must be ready to go back into the bathhouse. And he comes rushing in. I need to see Hillel. I need to see Hillel. I need to see Hillel. Once again, they call him out. He covers himself. He comes outside. He says, what can I do for you? And the guy says, why is it that people who come from China have got split eyes? This is, by the way, the Gemara tells us the story. Why they got split eyes? So he says, the Eibishter helped to evolve people's look and the way that they are through circumstance. So they came from very dusty, windy, sunny, hot places, and the eyes were thin to protect the eyes so that the sand and the dust and the dirt doesn't get in, the sunlight doesn't get into the eye. So they have eyes that are narrowed eyes. That's why it comes out like that, and it evolves, and that's the way that they're born. He says, wow, really, that's amazing, and thank you, and thank you, and thank you. He says, anything else I can do for you? He says, no, go back. And Hillel goes back into the bathhouse. He waits another. And so he keeps on going, this guy. And the next question is, interestingly enough, why do people from Africa, he says, have flat feet? So Hillel explains to him, because these people that you're talking about, they live near marshy lands, and therefore their feet evolve to be flatter so that they don't sink in when they're walking. That's why they have flat feet. He explains it to him. And so he keeps on going. He does it to him, 10 times. And eventually Hillel sits down with him and says, listen, you've got a lot of questions. Isn't there something that I can, don't you want to ask more? We'll sit here and so on. All the patience, all the time in the world. And this guy then says to him, something like, I hope that in the world there's never another one of you. This guy says to Hillel. And Hillel says, why? He says, because you just cost me 400 zuz. He says, because I tried my utmost to get you ticked off, to make you lose your temper. And you wouldn't. And it was a bet, it was a wager that I had. And you proved that you can't. So this guy was like upset. So Hillel says, thank God that that you lost the 400 zuz, because it was much better that you did that than that I should have lost my temper. Because it's a midah that I want to have, and I never want to lose my temper, and very, very patient and very kind and very connected with everybody. This was Hillel. Now he tells us here, where did I learn that all from? What is it that I want to be, and what is it that I want you to be? Mital midav shel Aaron. Where do we get this all from? We got this from Aaron. And as we said there, this was Aaron HaKohen. Now let's think about the Baal Midas, the unbelievable character of a person like Aaron. Aaron, think about it. First of all, this was a man who watched his brother become the leader, never says a word. Aaron is not a person who's jealous of anybody. On the contrary, Aaron remarkably is absolutely satisfied with every position that he's put in. He accepts everything. Yes, we famously talk about when Aaron loses his sons, the incredible way that Aaron is Vayidam Aaron. The Torah says that Aaron was silent. He didn't say a word, loses 2 sons, and he's absolutely silent. Aaron is somebody who goes down in Jewish history as being the epitome of a person who is absolutely satisfied and comfortable with everything that Hashem dishes out for him. You say, my brother is going to be the leader. I am so happy about that. I'm so chuffed. I'm so inspired by my brother. What can I do to help him? You say that this is going to happen, that that's going to happen, whatever. Aaron is the most incredible human being with the most incredible midas, with the most incredible emotions and ways of communication with other people. This is Aaron. But not only that, Aaron was somebody, says here, the Mishnah, that we should learn from Aaron, because Aaron over here, Dafka, he mentions him without saying Aaron HaKohen. Had we said here Aaron HaKohen, our Mefarshim tell us, that would already have put a notion of separation to Aaron. A Kohen is someone, lahavdil, I'm just coming from a funeral. I'm a Kohen. As a Kohen, we've got to stand at a distance. Kohanim kind of speak in a way of separateness. There is maybe an aloofness, a separateness. We're not always together with everybody. Thank God, only when it comes to funerals and so on. But Aaron was someone who didn't, for 1 minute, ever use his high office or his position for his own favor. He never kind of needed it or wanted an accolade. He didn't need to be called Aaron HaKohen. He didn't need to be Aaron the priest. He was happy with Aaron. And he did whatever it was that Aaron needed to do to show that he loved everybody. Every single person was loved. And this is, by the way, one of the reasons that Torah tells us that when it came to people getting tzaras, when people got the leprosy, the skin disease, the ailment that they got through spiritual misdemeanors, through lashon hara, or whatever else it was that caused them to have tzaras, who did they have to go to? They had to go to the Kohen to find whether they were pure or impure. Who did they have to go to? They had to go to someone who loved them, someone who cared for them. By the way, the bracha that we make, that when we bless the Jewish people, when Kohanim go up to Duchen, we bless the Jewish people, which is only done in South Africa, in all places in the Golan and the diaspora. We only do it on Yomim Tovim, on Yom Tov. The Birkas Kohanim that we do, the bracha that we make, is Levorech es Hamei Yisrael be'ahava. We've got to bless the Jewish people with love. We're blessing the Jewish people with love. The whole point of Aaron was that he taught this incredible love for everybody. So what did he ultimately want to see by everybody, Aaron? He wanted to see that not only did he love everybody, but he wanted to see that everybody loved everybody else. He wanted people to have shalom. He wanted people to have peace, that there should be peace between people. If you really love people, peace is the one thing that you want between yourself and them, and therefore you want, and you also want between them and others. You want there to be peace. So he was an Ohev Shalom. He always wanted there to be peace. Aaron couldn't stand conflict. He couldn't stand animosity. He couldn't stand differences that drove people to do things in a different way, or take a stance or stand against each other. He wanted there to be peace, the ultimate peaceful man. But he wasn't just an Ohev Shalom. He was a Roidev Shalom. The word Roidev Shalom is much stronger. Roidev Shalom means that he went out of his way to make peace. Now, there's some who suggest that the word Rodef in Torah doesn't have the most positive, meaning, not the most positive consequence. A Rodef is actually taken from the idea where someone chased after somebody else to murder them. That's called a Rodef. He tracked him down in order to kill him. So the word Rodef has got a little bit of a negative connotation. And so what does it say about Aaron? It says that Aaron, God forbid, there was nothing negative about what he did, but Aaron was even prepared to tell a little white lie in order to bring about peace. Aaron would go out of his way to make peace, even if it meant that he had to be a roidef in that term, that he had to do something, not according. If he did something not exactly perfect, this is what Aaron HaKohen was prepared to do. So what would he do? He would meet Reuven, and he would say to Reuven, I heard you had an argument with Shimon. And he said, yeah, and I'm never going to speak to that. You're good for nothing again. And he said, whoa, 1 second. I happened to meet him yesterday, and he said he would love to make peace with you. He would love to meet with you. He can forgive you. It's all forgiven. It's all done and dusted. You know, that was what he says, really? He's prepared to apologize. He's prepared to go. He says, yeah. And then he would run off to Shimon, and he would say, Shimon, I was just talking to Reuven, and Reuven says he wants to make peace with you. And this is the way, one of the ways they say that Aaron HaKohen would be roidev shalom. He would go out of his way to try and pursue peace. He didn't only love peace, he wanted all the time to make peace. He was a peacemaker. He was a peace broker. He was the one who wanted to bring about peace between everybody all the time. Now, a key lies in the next part of this Mishnah. It says, Oyev es habrios umekarvan laTorah. Oyev es habrios. He loved, and the word used here is brios. Brios means creatures, from the word bara, which means to create. Hashem tells us that in the beginning of the creation of the world, Hashem created the heavens and the earth. And usually when we talk about creatures, we talk about creatures as being anything other than human beings or anything other than Jews, right? We talk about the creatures, the animals of the world, and so on. Here, our sages say what Hillel is trying to tell us is Oyev es habrios. Oyev es habrios means, as the Rebbe explains, Oyev es habrios means that he teaches us that we've got to love people, all people, even if the only accolade they have, the only thing they have going for them is that God made them, that Hashem created them. Imagine someone who has absolutely no mitzvahs, someone who has absolutely no midas, someone who has absolutely nothing to talk about by way of a stature in the community or a standing or an ability to do it. He's never done anything good. He has one thing and one thing only to brag about. Hashem created him. Says Hillel, this is the lowest common denominator that we all have. Never mind talking about tzaddikim and rashoyim, righteous people and wicked people. Here he says, if people have only one thing going for them, and that's that Hashem created them, Aaron found a way to love them, and Aaron teaches us, says Hillel, that that's what we've got to love too. We must love people no matter what, and no matter who, and no matter how. Just the fact that they were created, it's enough reason to love them. But then says Hillel, don't stop there. If you really love them, you've got to know what they need the most. If you really want to prove that you love somebody, you've got to give them Torah. So there he says, if you really love people, so love them and mekarvan la Torah, bring them close to the Torah. Now, we want to go out of our way here to point out that here as well, Hillel is giving us a very, very important, fundamental, basic tool in Jewish life, and that is mekarvan la Torah. You know, the Rebbe didn't like that the world used to use the idea, they used to talk about kiruv rechokim, bringing people who are far away, bringing them close. The Rebbe said, nobody's far away. Who are you to judge that somebody's far away? What does it mean that somebody's far away? We're all close on a certain level. Don't call people rechokim, don't call them far away. Here he says, mekarvan la Torah, bring them close to Torah, and pointed out by all our sages that he never said, bring the Torah close to them. We don't adjust the Torah to suit people. Rather, show them that the Torah is indefatigable, that it's uncorruptible, that it's completely, never mind bulletproof, but the Torah will stand up to scrutiny on any level, anywhere, anytime. It is emes, it is complete truth, it is absolute, it is the absolute kindness, it's the absolute logic, it's the absolute reasoning, it's the absolute kedusha, the holiness of this world. It's completely, completely unwaverable and unchallengeable. Mekarvan la Torah. Teach people that we have to bring them close to Torah. People can move. People can change. People can be improved. So remember that it's not for you to be judgmental and not to say, hey, 1 second, you've got nothing, and therefore you've got a lot to learn. No. I recognize that Hashem created you. I recognize that because of that, I love you. And I recognize that because of all of that, the biggest thing that I'm going to do because I love you is I'm going to bring you close to the one thing that you deserve and the one thing that you need and the one thing that we all need. I'm going to give you the most prized, precious gift of all. I'm going to bring you close to Torah. And this is Hillel's advice. Get ourselves back to being from the students, from the pupils of Aaron. Take a leaf out of his book. Oyev shalom v'rodev shalom. Love peace and pursue peace, just like he did. We should love all creatures. We should love all people. Don't be selective and say, I'm only going to like the good ones, or I'm only going to like the ones in my family, or I'm only going to like the ones in my community, or I'm only going to like the ones that I feel that I can get along with. No, says Hillel. Love everyone. Everyone, good, bad, and ugly, no matter what your opinion is. And your job is to be mekarev them, to bring them closer to Torah, show them and give them the most precious gift that you possibly could. Now, we've got to remember that all of this fits in perfectly with our, and I said to you, we would talk about some of the other things very, very briefly here right at the end about Hillel. There was the well-known story of the heathen. So it wasn't in the bathhouse, but here a heathen, a person who was purporting to be mocking and looking down upon Yiddishkeit and so on, came to see Hillel, and he said to him, teach me the whole Torah while I stand on one foot. Now it says that he had done the same thing. He had spoken the same words to Shammai. He said to Shammai, tell me the essence of Torah and what it is or whatever. And it says Shammai didn't have time for him. Shammai pushed him out. Shammai said to him, get out of here. Go away, go find somebody else. Hillel sits down with him and says, okay, you know what? Bottom line is Avas Yisrael. Bottom line is love everybody. Now go and study. There's a lot of learning that you've got to do around that. How to learn, how to bring people closer to Torah, how to work with them, how to truly love them. What does peace really mean? What's it truly all about? He set him on his path in the right direction. So Hillel gave time to people. And in that way, by giving people time, you can eventually bring them close to Torah. It's one of the oldest parts of Jewish thinking. More people have come close to Torah by being invited to a Shabbos table, by feeling the warmth of a Jewish home, by feeling the warmth of an embrace by somebody who shows them love and care and affection, And in that way, that is how we can bring them close to Torah. We can't bring people close to Torah by turning our backs on them and saying, go learn, and making it cold and hard and difficult for them to be able to ascend to the levels of Torah that we think that they can accomplish. Our whole point is first show them love. And when we've shown that love, and when there's that love and that care and affection, the ability to bring them close to Torah will follow suit and will come soon thereafter. We'll continue next week with the next one of Hillel's pieces of advice, but otherwise it remains for me to wish you a great week ahead, and thank you for listening today and joining us on our Tools for Life Pirkei Avos Monday 1 to 1:30. Take care and have a great week.
Thank you, everyone.
Keep well, everybody. Take care.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'll come now. Just going to deal with here. What's there? The 7th.
Number a couple of excerpts down. Can't be down 1 point. With 2 and 9.